everybody. How are you? I hope you're well. I've been having a mull. As in mull of guitar. Not quite the same, I don't think, but there we go. Mull. It's mulling time. Come be a word teacher, by the way. I keep saying it. I know you get bored of it. But it's what keeps me going. So if you can join, please do help, because we're nowhere near the end, and some people seem to think we are. So that's the first thing that I've been mulling about. Post-Cass, I'm going to call it. Post-Cass. I think this is what the title of the video will be today. Mulling post-Cass, right? Because Cass was seismic. Absolutely seismic. And I've been all over the shop ever since it was released. And finding it hard to concentrate and do things and get stuff done, like writing year 3 of the programme, okay? I sit there in front of the screen for 10 minutes at a time and then there's nothing. There's just nothing in my head at the moment except Cass. And I was wondering whether that's the same for some of you. In that I realise that I am now in a permanent state of still, quiet, unnoticeable rage. I'm living my life in a state of permanent enragement. Not because, I'm mad at everyone, but because I'm so unbelievably incensed that what happened with Cass happened, that the adult clinics wouldn't give them any information and nobody's followed up on the 9,000, the majority of them gay and lesbian, who went through this absolute meat factory that is everything from Mermaid, Stonewall, the LGBT Foundation onwards, and the schools that teach this to children as if it's something that's real. So I've been in an absolute state of rage, trying to get my head around the few little bits of what I know to be reality, and dealing with it with friends who have seen me over the last 5 or 6 years take part in this collaborative endeavour, which, by the way, has been incredible. I think we've done an extraordinary thing, and that this movement will go down in history as one of the first major movements to really leverage social media. I honestly believe that. And I think without X, and without Twitter, and without Elon Musk taking over Twitter, I think this would never have happened. I think we've got a huge amount to thank Mr. Musk for. And also our ability to recognise that this is primarily about free speech. Because when speech dies, when the ability to speak dies, the ability to think dies. It's not just one thing, it affects many things. And the ability to speak died in 2014 when the no debate mantra started with Stonewall on this particular subject. The rage comes from that, and it comes from knowing that this has been going on for a very long time indeed. And it comes from knowing that, although it's been 6 years for me and maybe the similar time or less or more for you, that some people, particularly women, have been calling this what it was and trying to tell everyone what it was for nearly 50 years. I'm enraged about that. But what it illustrates, and I think does so beautifully to all of us, is that you can take on the law and get the law to change. Culture's totally different. If a people are bent on believing something, they will believe it. And we have allowed, in this belief system that is gender identity ideology, queer theory, and all its nonsense cousins like critical race theory, is that we've allowed this belief to fester to the extent where they have now infiltrated schools, the police, and everything else. And that's what we really need to have to deal with now. So I feel a bit like battle worn? I think that's the right word, isn't it? Battle worn. Knowing that we won the battle on the medical front, and we've won that battle resoundingly, but that we have still got the wars to fight in every other way as people double down and continue to believe this absolute cobblers that they are believing. The danger to our society of pseudoscience and anti-science should not be underestimated by any chalk. It just shouldn't. People talk about disinformation. Disinformation is easily disproved. So you go, right, that doesn't sound right. I'll do a bit of research. 20 minutes later, right, so they're talking bollocks. Or in most cases, if you read in the headlines, all you have to do is read paragraph 4 and you know they're talking bollocks. So the headline's used to gather your attention, and then it turns out that the article's actually not quite what it was. I do that occasionally on here, don't I? Try to get your attention, then talk about someone else. So, you know, this is with us now, and it's been with us forever. It's just with us in greater numbers now because we see it more. So a lot of this is all about the fact that we now have the ability to communicate in a way that is far quicker than we've ever been able to do it before, and that's fantastic. It was Terry Pratchett, I think, said that a rumour can go around the world before the truth can get its boots on. That's never been more true. But now we have Cass. Now we have Cass, and watching them try to rubbish it. These people are reprehensible. And watching television stations like the BBC and others giving these bloody TRAs and trans nutters time is reprehensible. So that was what I've been mulling about. I've come to a few conclusions, so I thought you might like to hear them. First thing is, we have to stop talking to trans and TRA nuts. We have to stop talking to anybody who will not unequivocally state that there has been a medical scandal that was riddled with homophobia and misogyny from the start, and that we need to end it across the board, not just NHS, across the board. So we stop talking to them. That's my first thought, right? As head warrior teacher, as I call myself. I'm more Florence of Arabia, but that's just me, right? So head warrior. We stop talking to them immediately. And by that I mean, if you spot them on Twitter, just retweet them and say one to block, and block it or mute it. Mute it. That's what I do. Mute it. Mute it. Eh? Apparently it's better for the algorithm if you mute. Stop talking to them. Right? And the BBC needs to stop having them on. And every other TV channel and radio station needs to stop. There are no two sides here. Okay, let's stop with the two sides nonsense, because I'm sick of it. There aren't two sides. Medically experiment on children or not medically experiment on children. You're not going to have that conversation over a cheese board and a bottle of wine. There is no two sides. There never was. That's the first major thing that I've decided I'm going to stick with now, because I've always thought that, but, you know, we need to be stronger on that, I think. And then the next thing is there's no such thing as gender dysphoria. There you go. I've said it. Doesn't exist. It was made up, for God's sake, by a bunch of nutters, mostly driven by their Frankenstein science wants. It was made up. It's not. If anything, it's bodily integrity disorder. It's maybe not even that. And in most cases, it's just social contagion that's made people mentally ill. So stop talking about gender dysphoria. It doesn't exist. Even Cass talked about gender dysphoria. She's wrong about that. Right? But then she's wrong about a few things. Who cares? It's still done a fantastic job, right? And but what a brilliant report. Whoop. So the gender dysphoria thing we need to stop talking about because it doesn't exist. That's the next thing. Okay. The third thing is, well, what do we do next? Well, I've got a plan. And that's why I'm doing this under the Winning Mindset banner, because I've got a plan and I want to run it past my warrior teachers because they will watch this. Here's how I think we should see things moving forward. And from that is what I think comes our next plan. We categorise people that are involved in this as being one of three groups. Now, I've said it time and again, and other people have now said it. This is a cult. It has all the hallmarks of a cult. Not some, all the hallmarks of a cult, including flesh sacrifice, as we know. All the hallmarks of a cult. So we're going to start at the top. And we first of all identify people that we would call high priests. Now, the high priests will be the likes of Judith Butler, Lloyd Russell Moyle, Alicia Kearns. These are the people who have influential direct power themselves, but are in positions in which they're able to exercise that power for the betterment of the cult, right? That's the high priest. So I would also include in that the leaders of the banks, the leaders of Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Asda, any organisation that pushed this in any way whatsoever. They would then have the head of that organisation, regardless of whether they knew, would be classed as a high priest. And the high priests should go to jail. It's that simple, okay? That's where we should be open to get them. They should go to jail. That's Humza Yusuf as well, mate. Right, so the high priests, these are the ones that, let's get it going, it's all wonderful. Right, the high priests. That's the first ones, right? Then we're going to go down a rung. Then we have what are called the acolytes, which are the ones that carry out the instructions of the high priest. They are the ones who would be teaching it to children in school. They are the ones who would be pushing it in the workplace. They are the ones who will be running HR. And they are the ones that would be sort of flitting around in a given organisation, or they are the ones that would be advocating for what we know to be an iatrogenic, homophobic belief system, but not necessarily with any direct power. Their power is derived from the high priests. Okay? So high priests, and then you've got the acolytes. Next, he says, amen, because it sounds religious, because it's a cult, right? Next, he says, now we've got the adherents. Now, we've won a huge battle in what is going to be a very long war, and because of that, we are now able to see the adherents shiny bright like we never were before, because they refuse to accept the Cass report, they refuse to accept the medical scandal, they refuse to accept that they've been experimenting on gay and lesbian children, and they refuse to accept that we have done awful harm to a generation of gays and lesbians. They refuse to accept it. Now, they are the adherents. They will not necessarily hold any power, be it direct or be it derived from. They just won't stop. They are immaterial only inasmuch that they don't have any particular power, but they're the ones at the front with the posters, right? Or they're the cannon fodder of this cult, okay? Now, don't talk to them. Block them, don't talk to them. If they're in your business and organisation, make sure you join the Free Speech Union and then use the Cass Review and cleverly, if you can, find a way to make their position untenable, in which case they will be fired or they will be dismissed for gross misconduct for supporting the medicalisation, sterilisation and mutilation of gay and lesbian youth. That's the adherents. There's your three tiers. High priests, acolytes, adherents, okay? Now, that's the three tiers of the cult. Outside of that, you've then got the unknown people, the people who are unknowing. They don't know about this yet, or they think it's all a storm in a teacup, or it's just the nice trans on Coronation Street. They have no idea what has happened or what is about to happen. That's where the warrior teachers live, really, is in talking to them and getting them to understand and providing resources and trying to get them to understand where we're going and trying to help them get their head around it, because often those people won't pay attention until their daughter says they're trans or their son says they're trans, or something that affects them in their workplace happens and they realise what's going on. So those are the three main strands of this cult that we now have to fight. And then there's the people on the outside who don't yet understand, and that's the big job. That's the big job, right? From the perspective of me, as opposed to, head warrior teacher, I've identified several acolytes, several acolytes within the community of Manchester, including those in Manchester Pride, LGBT Foundation, and various bars and clubs, and I'm going for them. It's them I'm after, right? Because they're nearby, it gives me focus and I can do it. Others will take on various other types of people in the pyramid, but the vast majority of us, particularly warrior teachers who have done such a good job in learning all about this, will find themselves talking to people who don't understand and trying to find a way to give them a framework to understand how we've mutilated children in 2024 and 2023 and over the previous 10 or 12 years. So that's where I think we are. And I think that's where we begin. And to begin, stop talking to them. Secondly, if you find an acolyte or an adherent in your workplace, find a way to do something about it. Find a way to make a complaint. Find a way to get them investigated, because they'll still be pushing this, right? They'll still be pushing it. If you find yourself with acolytes, which are the likes of the funders. So, for example, you've got the high priests at the Manchester Pride, the LGBT Foundation, the Tavistock Clinic. Who funded them? Where did the money come from? Are there any local businesses that are actively funding Mermaids or funding Stonewall, the LGBT Foundation, or any of the other groups that are responsible for this medical scandal and absolute and abhorrent attack upon gays and lesbians? Where does the funding come from? So is your local business, which happens to be Lush or whatever it may be, they think they've gone, haven't they? Was it Lush or the Body Shop? I forget which. Or have they been pushing it? Wagamama is another one. Have they been pushing it? I know Starbucks did a deal with Mermaids, and they've been pushing it. So the owner of Starbucks in the UK, the Starbucks that took part in that, should be held accountable for being a high priest, because they used their power to proliferate the cult's agenda. So that's where I think we are. We've got to start looking at it from that perspective, and warrior teachers already look at it from that perspective. And in doing so, we are able to get to the point where these people can be pointed out. And the easiest thing to do is obviously to learn from others how to do it and to sit and talk to each other and find out ways of getting these people gone. From my perspective now, it is important to me that I'm localising what I'm doing. So my assault is now on Manchester Pride. It's on any charity that has, or business that has funded the LGBT Foundation or Mermaids directly. Manchester Pride are still culpable in this without a shadow of a doubt. So I should be looking to businesses who intend to fund them in the future so that they do not do so. That will hurt, I think. But that's where I'm going, because I desperately want the people I know who were part of building Canal Street and all its, drinking and whoring and slavish gaying. They were where I was. They've known me long enough. So I think it's time now to start to hold people locally to account and say, look, this is what's going on, and you're part of it if you fund Manchester Pride, the LGBT Foundation, the Proud Trust, or any of these cult belief systems that are being run by people. The other important thing to remember is Hannon's razor, right? Don't put down to wickedness what you can assume is stupidity. Now, post-Cass, you should be less cautious about that. Post-Cass. If they right, so the high priests are never going to give up, right? Never. They'll have to go to jail. They'll have to be taken down. The acolytes, many of them will disappear when the high priests go, but the adherents are a different ballgame. They're not going to give this up easily because it's their own individual belief system that they've wrapped themselves around. So bear in mind Hannon's razor. Don't put down to wickedness that which you can describe as stupidity, but don't bear it in mind as much as you did previously, because now these people must be taken out, and if necessary, they must be taken out and completely neutered, i.e. lose their jobs, not able to function. Good, off you go, bye-bye. That's where I'm at. You let me know where you are in the Dubris, all right? That's it. I'll see you later. Ta-da, folks.